It's providing the high touch, high service approach that you could only normally have in place if it's extra luxury, but having that at any size, at any scale, at any price point.
If you think your business will suffer for bad reviews, mine can't even exist if my reviews aren't stellar.
Do you charge the property manager? Do you charge the guests somehow? What's the mechanics behind it?
I have had some guests actually leave reviews on property manager websites about, hey, the property was great, but the thing that was really awesome was this concierge service that they connected us with.
How crazy have some of those requests gotten? Like, wow, like we were not expecting this, but you had to pull it together somehow?
You can't fire a robot if they give a bad recommendation, so there's no accountability. Who do you call?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hospitality Edge podcast, where we bring together what we think are two sides of the same coin, real estate and hospitality. And really, we bring together here leaders, operators, entrepreneurs in the space so that they can tell us about their journeys, their stories, the lessons they've learned along the way, and even some of the mistakes that they might have made so that you don't have to make those same mistakes yourself. Today, I'm very excited to be here with Chris Morton, the founder and CEO at the Coastal Concierge. Thanks so much, Chris, for being here with us.
Thank you, Sebastian. It's an honor and pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, let's start with, just tell us, where are you based? Where are you taking the call from?
Yeah. So I'm in beautiful Southwest Florida, close to Sarasota, which is about halfway in between Tampa and Fort Myers, right on the coast.
Lovely. I wish I was there right now. That sounds lovely. So Chris, tell us a little bit about what you do, and
Yeah.
most importantly, before we go into the specific business model at a high level, what does it mean to be intentional with your guest experience?
Yeah. So Sebastian, I always like to tell folks that we are the virtual version of a concierge desk at an upscale hotel. And our model is to partner with local hotels and vacation rental property managers, really just to help provide their guests with a better guest experience. Just in terms of being intentional with guests, that to me is really all about building rapport and relationships with guests, and providing a little bit extra layer that may not exist or may not be. Property managers may not have the capabilities to kind of going to that extra gear to really provide that guest experience. I mean, we all know that it's all about occupancy and filling up rooms. Sometimes we can get kind of caught up with that being the foremost and utmost goal. But I feel like we've got a nice little mousetrap here to plug in and provide a little bit extra layer if guest experience is something on the radar screen for those types of entities.
So what does that look like as far as like what do you think are some of the things that property managers don't get to do that make a difference from a guest experience perspective because they're so busy, running the operation, they just forget about these details or don't have the time to get to them? What are those key fundamental elements that you think most property managers just end up missing, and it ends up affecting the guest experience?
Yeah, I mean, so we're all about providing a service and then serving others. I mean, we come to this with a service mentality. So I think what is very unique about our business and where we can help property managers is we engage with those guests up front in an ideal situation. Once we know a guest has registered to use our service, we like to reach out, with a welcome call or text, however that guest wants to engage with us, and really start to get to know them a little bit, start to build a relationship with them, have a rapport. They like to talk to us. They enjoy just, you and I got on the phone, we were talking a little bit about sports beforehand. I mean, that's, let's talk about what they're not only what they want out of their trip, but some of their personal life situations. Really start to become friends and form that relationship. So I think I know I've been on that. The reason I started this business is I've been on that guest experience side, and sometimes you do kind of could feel like a little bit of a number as a guest, just kind of coming through the till there. So, we like to really amp up that experience by building that rapport, building that relationship, and the trust level, and then finding out, what that guest is looking to do, and really being intentional about learning the fine details, asking the right questions, and those sorts of things as we engage in the process.
Not so basically it's almost like providing the high touch, high service approach that perhaps you could only normally have in place if it's extra luxury, or if it's a massive operation, but having that be in place at any size, at any scale, at any price point, because essentially you're coming in post booking, from what I'm understanding. You wouldn't be there prior to the booking. You would be there post booking. Is that correct?
You're correct. Yeah, post booking, and that's why I kind of lead with, we are the virtual version of a concierge desk at an upscale hotel. So yes, we are trying to curate an experience that someone might get at a Ritz Carlton or Five Diamond type of hotel or resort, and bring that down to the level of property managers and mid range hotels and so forth. Again. Knowing that guests are looking for high personalization, they're looking for experiential travel. Most of the entities, at least in the area that we serve, don't have that concierge level. They're relying on front desk staff to do that, or there may be a dedicated person, guest experience manager, inside of a property manager's office. But it's really hard to get at that level with each guest. And then the way that we do things, in that we're out in the community, partnering with the local tour companies, building rapport and relationships with the actual tour providers. We know their businesses, but we also know them personally. We know their families, so we're bringing a relationship to a guest that there's really no way that they could have unless they work through us.
Interesting. And tell me, when you're looking to essentially hire people on your team, uh, you must have a very specific criteria of what you're looking for, and then I would guess also a very thorough training program, because not everyone has the hospitality gene, if you want to call
Right.
it like that. Let's start on the hiring side. What do you look for when you're trying to bring people on your team that are going to be guest facing, and what are some things that property managers can learn from the way that you bring
Yeah,
talent into your
absolutely. So
organization?
that's a great question. I think first and foremost with us, it's really about getting a feel for someone who has the right attitude. And when I mention attitude, it's a couple things. One, I mentioned the word earlier, servant's heart. I mean, that's really my heart. I mean, I have a calling to serve others, and it's interacting with people that you would potentially hire that you can just feel like they like to serve. I mean, that's what they do. And then really combining that with a problem solving mentality, because that's ultimately what we're doing when we're facing guests. We're serving them, and we're solving the little problems that kind of come up before, during, and throughout their process. So that's really first and foremost, is looking for those right candidates. And I have found that the beauty of being in the hospitality industry is you do have that hospitality gene running through a lot of entities. So you can certainly find folks that exhibit those types of attributes. But beyond that, then when we do training, we talk about building rapport and building those relationships with guests. So it's all about being able to speak to a guest, find out what their needs are, remembering their name when they speak to them, just really treating them in a way that they'll never forget. I mean, that's really one of our mantras, is let's make them feel special, so that they go home feeling like, wow, that concierge service really treated me in a way that I'll never forget. That was a great experience. They made me feel special. So it's building those relationships and rapport with guests is super important. That's kind of beyond the right attitude. I mean, that's the second part of it. And I think lastly, really, we want to make sure that, at least in my entity, is there good relationship builders externally as well. So being able to network out into the community, building rapport with local businesses, Um, being involved with the community. I mean, we do a lot of networking events. So we go out and we're involved in the local chambers of commerce, the local tourism bureaus. We go to their breakfast meetings, we go to their lunches, we go to their dinners, and we shake hands when we meet folks. And I think that's just a great way to build relationship skills. Especially for folks that are coming on board with us. They're just out in the community, uh, shaking hands and meeting folks. And beyond that, we also look for folks that like to get involved in the community itself. So, for example, myself, I'm involved locally in some civic organizations. So, we like to serve and we like to give back at the same time. So it's really kind of a combination of, I would say, the right attitude, being able to build rapport, and then also being engaged in the community. I think if you have someone like that that's willing to kind of go through that journey with you, you're going to have a pretty successful concierge type of person working for you.
Now, how do you think through the idea of building, let's say, without necessarily getting into the specifics, but the model of a concierge, let's say in hotels, traditionally you will have some level of incentives for upselling, certain services or tours or whatever that might be. So how do you think through, what's the best way to structure? And I'm just thinking of again, property managers that might be looking to build a concierge department for themselves.
Yes.
Eventually they might realize that they might rather outsource that, and they can go to you, or they might not be in your market, whatever that might be. But
Yes.
how have you thought about that structuring of the incentive plan for them to be willing and motivated to sell those extra services, but not to the point where they're going to be just trying to push for something that the guests might not actually want or actually need?
Great question. And again, that's why we got into this, is to be able to provide that. But if I were a property manager looking to build a concierge team within my entity itself, I mean, one, the hiring is really the key. I mean, you have to have, again, the questions that you just asked me about, building a team, training, hiring the right type of person. So if you can find somebody with that high service mentality, that great personality, somebody comes to work every day that's happy, that's always, happy to speak to the guests and provide that exceptional level of service. I mean, that's key. That's a little bit of a needle in the haystack sometimes to find, but if that's first and foremost. The next thing would be to you have to be able to provide them with some sort of a platform that they can utilize to communicate with their guests. So that would either be some sort of like a tech platform where they can do texting and outreach and being able to log the calls and any of the upsells and so forth that they are generating through that. And again, that would just, so assuming that would be in place, it would be the conversations between the guests and the concierge, kind of walking through what is that guest vision of their trip? Why did they take the trip in the first place? What memories are they hoping to create by going on this vacation? And then, how can we be intentional, or the property manager be intentional about pulling the right levers to make sure that those guests go home with those memories. From there, I think you're going to be looking at building a kind of a short list of key external partners that you trust that are going to be able to perform those services for your guests at a super high level. And I think one of the reasons that sometimes property managers don't necessarily get into the concierge side, I've met a lot of them want to do this, whether it's internal or external. The challenge is you can't always control the experience that the guest receives externally. So it's kind of like, gosh, if I start referring my guests to this boat rental company and they have a bad experience, then that reflects poorly on me, and maybe it's not worth it in the long run. So you have to have those key relationships that you form with those providers that you trust, and you have to have a vetting process. which we have, we have a pretty stringent process in terms of what their reviews are, but then we go out and we meet them personally. And, if, for example, if it's a boat rental company, I mean, before we send a guest out on their boat, we go out on the boat and we experience that and make sure that if we don't like it, then how can we recommend a guest to go on something like that? So, and then then you can work through the financials. You asked about that earlier. How do you work through those upsells? Assuming you've got, a viable partner, then those partners generally we find will form some sort of a financial relationship. I mean, that's kind of free. You become sort of a free sales force for them if you're working on like a commission basis with them. So most of them, if they're entrepreneurial, they're looking for ways to generate more streams of revenue. So I don't think those things are very hard to come by. You just have to have that vetting process, and you have to make sure that experience and service level that provider is performing for your guests are at the same or higher level that you're performing for your guests.
Totally. No, you're totally right. I hear that a lot of just property managers that hesitate to refer to local providers, to your point, because they don't want to be associated with what ends up happening afterwards. But if you have done a vetting process beforehand, you can confidently know that you're sending them the right way. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, just just walk me through the way you think about the different steps of the guest's journey, so to speak, and how do you try to structure the different touch points along the way? Like, is there a certain process that you have found work best, as far as when to call them, when to text them, when to send them something? What does that process look like, and why have you gotten to that particular process?
Yeah, great question. So, what we really like to do is when a guest registers, we have a process that's dialed in with the properties that we work with. So we know when a guest registers, we ask them to register for our service, and so we kind of have that automated in the beginning. But we really like to do a welcome call. First and foremost is once we get the registration, within about 24 hours, our team will generally reach out to that guest and say, "Hey, Sebastian, thank you for registering. I'm sure you're very excited about your vacation. What is it that we can do to help you plan or help you prepare for that? Is there anything on your mind that you want to make sure that you cover and begin to sort of formulate those amazing memories that we know you want to go home with, and just start the conversation, start that dialogue. And from there, every guest is different. It's, kind of like snowflakes, right? Every guest is going to be a little bit different in terms of how they want to engage, but we like to start out with that call. And then from there, usually we'll either check in again via call or with a text, but we don't really try to barrage those guests. We kind of feel out what it is that they want, and we're not trying to hard sell them upsells. If they don't want to talk to us, or if they are like, "Hey, look, I've got this. I mean, thank you. I just need one restaurant recommendation, and that's it." Then we'll kind of back off. We like to ebb and flow with what it is that the guest is looking for. We're just trying to be that extra layer. And some will engage us every day, and some will have a welcome call, and then we won't really hear from them again. And we don't want to chase them down. Again, we're not internal to the property manager. We're external. So we don't want to get into a situation where the guest feels like we're badgering them or something. We want to just kind of flow with them in the way that they want to flow there. So usually with us, and in terms of your question, it's an initial outreach call, and then we generally find that there's a lot of texting that kind of goes back and forth. That seems to be the guest preferred method. Everybody's kind of used to that. But a lot of them will pick up the phone and give us a call. The nice thing with our platform is that we do provide a digital concierge platform to all of our guests, and right within that platform, they can click a button to call us at any time. So they kind of have the ability to call, text, however they want to communicate with us. We kind of leave that up to them. But I would say, just in a normal visit, let's say average 7-day, type of vacation, you're looking at a typical outreach call in the beginning, and maybe 1 or 2 phone calls at the most, maybe two or three texts during that process. Just depends on how that guest wants to drive that experience. some, and it depends too. I mean, we've had a lot of very interesting ones where they're asking for curating a really unique experience, like a wedding proposal or something like that. Then there's going to be a lot more conversations. But just generally speaking, the kind of the average, like, hey, we're your concierge, we're here to help you. It's a few touch points throughout the week, and the guest generally drives that, drives that bus in terms of frequency.
Yeah, no, for sure. I get the idea of wanting to adapt to the preferences of each guest. That makes a lot of sense, and building something custom, right? Sounds like that's your approach as well. Um, how crazy have some of those requests gotten? Like, have you ever gotten something where you were like, wow, like we were not expecting this, but you had to pull it together somehow?
I think my favorite story is I had a guest that was trying to curate a 60th birthday celebration for his wife, and he flew his whole family in from all over the world. And we had a lot of activities during the week. Every day was something. Uh, this could be a 2 hour podcast if I talk to you about everything. But what he was really adamant about was he wanted to do a private jet out of Sarasota for one day down to Key West and rent slingshots. And then and just spend the day down in Key West with his family and come back. So that was right when I got started in this business a little while ago, and I was like, okay, how am I gonna pull this thing together? Because I'm generally working in the Sarasota market, and I know all the tour providers here, but hadn't really communicated or contacted anyone down there, but in Key West. But we pulled it off. We got a nice Gulfstream 4 together for him. 10 passenger jet, flew him down. We had the slingshots waiting on the runway for him when he pulled out. They jumped in there and they actually flew into Marathon, took the slingshots down to Key West, did a private food tour for his family during the day. Had just an unbelievable time. Drove the slingshots back on the plane and was back in Sarasota later that day. And I'm kind of keep it under wraps what that cost, but that was like it was an incredible investment on his end to pull that together for his family, but just created an absolute amazing memory for the family. And it was, I mean, I'm just envisioning that's something that family will never forget the rest of their life. It was just an incredible day. So anyway, that was a fun
That's
opportunity.
amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's amazing. And this makes me think about, the economics, quote unquote, on being able to offer a service like yours to a guest. As in, is this something that only makes sense in the luxury segment, or ultra luxury segment? Or because I'm just thinking out loud, right? Like, in this case, of course, I mean, the guests wanted a private jet. That's great. Probably they were not staying at a cheap property, I would assume. Does this make sense with budget, or not budget, but let's say average type properties? And if so, what are the financials behind it? Like, do you charge the property manager? Do you charge the guests somehow? What's sort of the mechanics behind it? And is
Yeah.
and is there a line you would draw where you would say, like, it makes sense to involve a company like ours for price points that are beyond this much? Anything under that, it won't make sense. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So first and foremost, targeting leisure travel, I mean, that probably goes without saying, but certainly like business travel hotels, I mean, that's not necessarily like a perfect fit for what we do. So it's really leisure. But we've got a very unique model that we can bring down market through our, relationships with providers and relationships with different entities. We've got some advertising opportunities externally that we can connect, and we can actually bring this solution down to market for property managers that don't necessarily have this in their budget, to be able to offer this product pretty much to anyone. So I'm not necessarily going to give away my trade secrets, but we can do this down market. It doesn't, the question really becomes how much of the upsell revenue the lodging entity wants to participate in, um, versus, hey, we just want to help. We just want to drive a better guest experience. If the idea is, hey, we're not necessarily looking to generate more revenue on boat rentals and private jets and things. We just want to have these amenities for our guests available. And we don't have the ability to go out and hire a concierge and pay a salary and pay that person benefits and build a tech platform for them to communicate with the guests on, and then hopefully they stay with us for a long period of time. What if they leave and we have to do it all over again? So where we can come in is, if an entity was like, hey, we're just really looking to boost our guest experience, then we've got some very cost effective options where, it's a fraction of a cost to plug us in, and then we just sort of are the ones that would participate on the upsell side, and the property manager just gets the benefit of the guest experience and higher star ratings, and hopefully that helps them in a competitive position to fill some more rooms.
Interesting. That makes sense. Yeah, because I guess that's the real I guess value proposition in a way. It's like giving VIP type services even when it's not necessarily a property that is ultra luxurious, because the property that's ultra luxurious can probably afford that concierge, right?
Yes, most, well, I'm saying most, but those that are in the market I serve, do have concierge. Some of them do, but most don't. And so my vision really is to be able to bring this type of service to that next tier. And, I have been doing this long enough where I know the pain I think that the property managers are facing in terms of margins. If you don't have a concierge service now, I want to be a realist. Many are probably not going to pay to put one in, just given the where the market is and competitiveness and so forth. Some may. So we had to create a type of product where we could still bring that in and provide all of those same services and make it affordable to both the guest and the actual property manager. So yeah, I think we've I say finally, but we've struck a balance where we can offer this really to any level of lodging entity that does tourism and leisure.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and I totally again see the value. Now, what have you seen the impact like be around, let's say the reviews, right?
Mhm.
When it comes to offering a personalized service like the one you offer, where you're talking with the guest, where you're going over the phone, right? You're going above and beyond. You're building something custom for them. What have you seen the impact be on the reviews?
Yeah, so fortunately, we're our reviews are great, and I would and just sort of mention, we mentioned a little bit before about those property managers that might be apprehensive about bringing in a service like this because the downside of like, what if they don't perform and it affects negatively on me? So one of my, sort of positioning points when I speak to a property manager is, if you think your reviews are bad if you think your business will suffer for bad reviews, mine can't even exist if my reviews aren't stellar. So I'm held to a very high level of accountability, which I think is nice and comforting to the property managers I work with. If we don't perform, we don't have a concierge business. We can't be a 2-star rated concierge and exist. So we have to be crushing and rocking it with our star ratings. But to your point, I mean, I have had some guests actually leave reviews on property manager websites about, hey, the property was great, but the thing that was really awesome was this concierge service that they connected us with that was able to set us up with, whatever it was in those situations. So and there's been some 5-star reviews because of that. And that's really what gets me excited, and that's what makes me happy is I I care about our reviews, but when the guest leaves a review on a property manager site because of the work we did and that helps them, that's where I feel a big sense of pride.
Yeah, and I think that is super important, especially nowadays when, first of all, the OTAs are becoming much more strict around their quality standards, and essentially any bad review can harm you tremendously to the point of even leading to the cancellation of your listing and you no longer being able to book your property, right? In some extremes. So having this service element be just like another element to the value proposition of your property, I mean, I think if anything, it can just increase the chances that you're going to get a good review, right, on the OTA, on the direct booking website, wherever the booking took place, because it's almost as if you were offering, an extra amenity, right? It's the amenity of having a dedicated concierge to help you with whatever you need to put in place, planning wise on site. So I think I think seeing it from that point of view really makes a lot of sense, especially nowadays, as I'm saying, where reviews are so important and so difficult to keep up with as far as the standards that the OTAs are putting in place.
Yeah, I mean, that's really one of the reasons I got into the business is, from the guest experience side, I've experienced some really amazing stays and I've experienced some not so great ones. And I've got lots of stories about the not so great ones, but, it's those that sort of inspired me to say, there's an opportunity here to help property managers and hotels boost those ratings. I mean, when I look at staying somewhere, I mean, I look at the Google reviews, and that's the first thing I look at. And, if somebody left a negative review, that could potentially impact whether I want to stay at a place or not. So, my thought was, wow, if I, could provide a service that actually helps boost those reviews, then it really get that guest experience up to a level that maybe doesn't even exist right now. It's, what can it be? What could the guest experience be? It really can be incredible, given this. And, we like to white label our product inside of the properties we work with. We want the guests to feel like we are just part of the lodging entity team, that we're not some external service. So when we call, we usually say, hi, this is Chris from the ABC Hotel Concierge team, just reaching out to check in with you and, see how we can make your stay amazing. I mean, I know that is a warming feeling to the guests, but then that's, they're feeling like we're, again, we're part of that hotel team, and boom, all of a sudden the hotel's portrayed as having a concierge and 250 amenities that they probably didn't have before, with all the things that we could do. It's a really unique scenario, I think, for folks.
No, it definitely is. It definitely is. Now, tell me, in terms of where you see. Well, actually, I want to touch on how you started this company. I want to touch on the experiences you went through, because I know you traveled a lot, right? And as a guest, you really got exposed to, like you said, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So just how did the concept come about? What's the story behind you coming up with this idea?
Yeah. So, prior to starting the company, I actually worked in a different industry, but it was an industry where I did a lot of business travel and I did a lot of personal travel as well. And I always enjoyed it. But one of the things that we did on the business side is we used to do a lot of trips and travel with clients and potential clients, and do the typical wining and dining, and taking people on trips and excursions, and to generate business and build the rapport. And I always kind of found myself as one of the folks that were creating the itineraries and picking out the restaurants and figuring out which golf courses we're going to play, or whatever the case may be. And I always absolutely love that, because I don't know, I think it's maybe the type A personality that I have, or maybe a perfectionist. Like, I loved putting together the itineraries, and then especially loved at the end when those guests and customers would say, "Man, this was just a great trip. This was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. You guys knocked it out of the park." And so I've always sort of had that sort of concierge in me. I've just enjoyed doing that. Um, but having done that and having traveled to a lot of places, experienced super high end and some not so great experiences. And there's a couple stories really that resonate with me. A few years ago, I was on a college visit with my son, and we went to a school in North Carolina. And it happened to be for a recruiting trip for lacrosse. He was an aspiring college athlete. So we went down to the school and did a whole day on the sports fields, and he did his thing. And then we went back we were staying in an Airbnb. And he said, "Dad, man, it's been a long day. You and I, we both love barbecue. Let's go find a great barbecue restaurant." And I said, "All right, great. Well, let me call the Airbnb host and see what she says." And so I picked up the phone, called the host, and said, "Hey, love your place. It's really convenient. Really enjoy staying here. My son and I are looking to go grab some barbecue. Can you give me a recommendation to something in the area?" And she had said, "You know what? I don't even like barbecue, and I don't even know what to tell you. I'm sorry." And so kind of hung up the phone, and I was a little bit disappointed. But that was just one instance where I was like, okay, if a service like mine existed there and just called us, in a situation like that, like I would have felt so much better about that host caring about my experience. In that moment, I felt literally like I was sort of just a number, type of thing. Now, again, we've had some amazing experiences, and I hate to highlight those kind of things, but having that situation, and I've been to some places, with my wife, and we kind of walk down to the front desk and say, "Hey, we're in town. We're looking for a special occasion. Might be here for our anniversary or something like that," and asking the front desk folks, and you just really, unfortunately, a lot of times they're not familiar with the area, or they'll say, "Hey, this is what I like," and not necessarily being able to curate something based on my needs. So these kind of things continue to happen over and over again. And my wife always tells a story where we were sitting on a beach getting ready for sunset, and we weren't we were going to go out to eat, but then we didn't want to miss the sunset. And we were like all of a sudden in a quandary with what's the dinner plans going to be. And our kids were a little bit younger. And she was like, you really need to start up that business where you could just call your concierge company, and they would be able to either figure out something for you or have something waiting in the room or something like that. But there's a gap that I think that you should fill this gap and figure out a way to start that. So that's really kind of the way that we got going with it. Is I just felt like there was an opportunity there to fill that service gap. And I think a lot of entities don't necessarily know that that's happening to their guests. So we're kind of setting out on a mission to improve guest experiences, all over the place as much as we can. We just feel like we can do that, with the platform that we have.
I totally hear you, man. And with that story that you just told, I mean, I can totally see how, yeah. I mean, you feel like a number. To your point, you're asking for advice. I mean, this whole idea of the OTA platform. At first, it was really this concept of, well, you're gonna get to stay with a local, right? And then it became, okay, well, you won't stay necessarily with the local, but at least you'll have access to the local, and you can talk with them and ask them questions. But then, as it started becoming more of a business, I would say, um, I even talk with guests who say that there was a time when this industry was somewhat commoditized, where you could just throw a mattress and just some basic furniture into a property and just call it a rental property, and then just the goal was, how can I automate this as much as possible to not have to talk with the guests. and
Right.
then and then more and more, I think we're going towards a situation where, or a direction where, it's now like the commodity type properties are the ones that are hurting the most, are the
Yeah.
ones that are struggling the most, are the ones where there's been the most increase in supply. And because of those bad practices around quality and service and whatnot, well, guess what? Now you don't have the good reviews, and there's just hundreds of thousands of options of other commodity type properties. So guess who's gonna be affected first? Well, the commodity type property that doesn't care about service. So I don't know. I'm really excited about this too, because I do talk about like service used to be rewarded by the OTAs. Right now, it's not just being rewarded; it's also being punished, and it's just your biggest competitive edge, the way I
Yeah.
see it. So I think you're really onto something here. Uh, final thoughts on just the vision that you have for this company, and where would you like to see it be at in the coming years, as well as final thoughts on guest experience and hospitality overall, what it means to you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I would sort of close out with the technology side of things, and you kind of touched on it, and um, you sort of struck a chord when you're talking about how do we not talk to guests, and I think there is some of a perception out there with guests that feel like that's the way they get treated by certain places. So, I don't want hotels and property managers to ever be put into a box like that, because I know that's not what they want to portray. So the way that we've built our product is we do have the digital solution. Guests can book things right on the digital app that we create for the properties that we work with. But we also believe that hospitality is about personalized service, and to us, personalization means actually being able to talk to a human being if you want to. Because it's great to be able to book something on an app, but what if you have a question about a boat rental or something like that? Like I don't think that you can just force everyone into a digital only, AI only experience. So we believe in the technology. I love technology, but we are combining the best of technology with the warmth of the human touch. We're melding those two together so that you never lose that personal touch and the ability to talk to somebody. And again, we recognize not everybody wants to talk to somebody. I joke around with about different generations and so forth. Some are happy never talking to anyone. Some people, but there's others that actually like to speak with a live person. So our vision on that is most people are dealing with that, voicemails and being in endless call loops like in the workday every day. And we want to be that breath of fresh air where they actually push call and a live, happy, friendly person picks up and talks to them about how to make their vacation better. So that's kind of our vision on how we're melding technology with personal touch. But really, just the bigger vision is, this we really want to bring this concept and idea, into many more markets. Right now we're kind of along the west coast of Florida, but we can certainly see this, really, really expanding, to wherever leisure markets exist. But the one thing that we've learned is, again, in our business, it is much of it is about the local communication and connections that we are able to make. So we don't necessarily want to go into markets where we don't know any of the providers, because how can we then deliver on our value proposition of providing vetted providers to the hotels? I mean, very easy with technology and AI to go into a new market and kind of try to replicate that. But again, we want to make sure that the hotels and the property managers we work with are still reaping the rewards of those super high, star ratings and stuff like that. So we're on a kind of a measured scale, approach going into new markets. But we definitely have a big vision and could see this going, into quite a few more markets.
Yeah, and the last thing I would say is, especially with the whole AI trend going on, I think that there's going to be a point in time when what's going to be rare is going to be the human touch. What's going to be unique is going to be, you know, the
Yeah.
ability to talk with a human being and connect. And I think that because of the scarcity that human interaction is going to have, it's going to make it more valuable, right? If the moment you are going to restaurants and not talking with everyone, like with anyone, because the food is just coming, like we're getting there, like with
I know.
a robot is going to come and serve your food. And the like whatever the food truck, like, you know what I mean, like there's you're gonna go and check in at the I forgot the word there, at the airport, right? And
Yeah.
you're not going to talk with anyone either. It's going to be all automated. So it's just interesting how the human connectivity and interaction, the
Yeah.
fact that it's going to be so scarce, I think is going to make it even more valuable. And so I think it's just going to switch things around.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm sure AI will get to the point where we probably won't know that we're talking to a robot at some point, but I can sniff that out honestly in about 5 seconds normally, as you're talking to a chatbot or something like that online. I think most humans know when they're talking to a robot on the other line, on the other side. And, again, there's definitely a place for it. I mean, we utilize some of that, but, the challenge with it too is there's no accountability, right? So you can't fire a robot if they give a bad recommendation. You can't reprimand a robot if something doesn't work out right. So if you pop something in and you're looking for a restaurant, it wasn't, you thought you were going to an Italian restaurant, it was Mexican or something. I mean, some of that stuff happens. So there's no accountability. Like who do you call? So I mean, that's the other thing, is that like with a live human behind that, it's like, okay, if you mess up, you're kind of accountable and you have to answer it to someone, which
Mhm.
again is another reason to work with us. So
Love it, love it. Well, listen, Chris, thanks so much for your time. This has been super, super fun, super insightful. Where can people connect and get in touch?
yeah, thanks, Sebastian. It's been awesome and a pleasure. So best place to get in touch with us is our website, www.thecoastalconcierge.com. Or you can email me at chris@thecoastalconcierge.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here, Chris. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Sebastian.